I come to you with some major breaking news. We'll get to the specifics of why Trump is leaving the G7 summit in Canada early, and it's terrifying. First, though, I do want to circle back on the summit itself, because we have Middle East related why Trump is supposedly leaving. You also have him leaving a pretty embarrassing set of circumstances at this meeting with our allies and world leaders. And so I'll give you those two, and they're kind of reminders just to contextualize what he is leaving and his presence at the summit. But I missed completely one of his, I don't know, call it memory lapses, cognitive failures, or just he never knew the facts of the timeline that he's referring to. None of those options are particularly good. So let's start with this one. What I missed when we covered it before was that he talks about Putin getting kicked out. He was complaining, oh, why was Putin kicked out of the G8 that became the G7? That made him so upset. And he gets his timeline all wrong.
Together very well. I look forward to that. The G7 used to be the G8. Barack Obama and a person named Trudeau didn't want to have Russia in. And I would say that was a mistake, because I think you wouldn't have a war right now if you had Russia in. And you wouldn't have a war right now if Trump were president 4 years ago. But it didn't work out that way. But it used to be the G8. And now it's, I guess, what's that, 8 years ago, it switched over. They threw Russia out, which I claimed was a very big mistake. Even though I wasn't in politics then, I was very loud about it. It was a mistake in that you spend so much time talking about Russia, and he's no longer at the table. So it makes life more complicated. But you wouldn't have had the war. Other than that, I think we're going to accomplish a lot.
So why he's even bringing that up, who knows? He's just always ready to complain on behalf of Putin, I guess. But there, and then another clip, he goes, because of a guy named Trudeau. Now, the problem is, and you may have noticed this the first go-round, like Mediaite fact checks here, Trump flubbed his timeline as Trudeau's predecessor, conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper, led the charge to kick Russia out of the G8 in 2014, while Trudeau didn't take office until late 2015. So Trudeau didn't have anything to do with that. And by the way, if he did, or in this case it was Harper, it was the correct decision because of what the G7 or G8 is supposed to stand for. And then one other moment, and then we'll look at the news that he's rushing away from the G7 for a different reason. But here he opens up, and actually this in headline form is kind of interesting. Trump drops papers he just signed and mistakenly refers to the UK as the European Union. So not a great day at the G7.
The UK, and we just signed a document. This is, sorry about that. This is it.
A very important document.
Little windy out here.
It's not. You can see the trees behind him. The trees aren't budging. Huge, floppy trees behind him, and they're not budging.
And, we just signed it, and it's done. And so we have our trade agreement with the European Union, and it's a fair deal for both.
If you're wondering why it looks like Starmer is trying to take a big boy, it's because he's wincing at the fact that that agreement is with the United Kingdom, who is not in the European Union, and this agreement isn't about the European Union. Utter confusion. So on that fantastic note, it was announced that he's leaving early, rushing off back to DC. Caroline Levitt says President Trump had a great day at the G7, even signing a major trade deal with the United Kingdom and Prime Minister Keir Starmer. I thought it was with the European Union, Caroline. Much was accomplished, but because of what's going on in the Middle East, President Trump will be leaving tonight after dinner with heads of state. So this is where we get to the very terrifying aspect of this. Trump pinned to his Truth Social profile this message, which could have something to do with why he's leaving early. Iran should have signed the deal I told them to sign. What a shame and waste of human life. Simply stated, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I said it over and over again. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran, which logistically is impossible. There's over 10 million people in Tehran. And what this could indicate about the United States getting into potentially very soon direct conflict with Iran is horrifying. Trump said, somebody please explain to Cookie Tucker Carlson that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I don't want them to either. I also don't want a war with Iran. America first means many great things, including the fact that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Make America great again. So those parts are just him repeating that he's kind of in inner conflict with his own base that's saying right now his foreign policy is not exhibiting the America first principles that they want him to exhibit or whatever. And so he's saying, no, I define it and Tucker is kooky, which true, Tucker is kooky. But you never seem to have a problem with that before. But the particularly notable part and what is causing him, it seems, as was referenced by Levitt, to leave the G7 early and go back to DC is this: everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. What is coming, we don't know, but I think you can imagine. Other people reporting on this, Caitlin Collins saying President Trump is leaving the G7 summit early and will return to DC tonight. While we're doing follow-up segments, let's just talk about some of this. You might remember that the Minnesota shooter had a list, right? And one of the members of the Democratic Party that was on that list was Tina Smith, a Democratic senator. And Mike Lee, the Republican senator, was the one who said, "Nightmare on Wall Street," with a photo of the shooter at someone's house. And this is what happens when you don't let Marxists get their way, with the shooter at a Republican senator making light of the attempted assassination and the assassination of an innocent person and her innocent husband. And Tina Smith apparently was trying to track down Mike Lee to confront him, and she did. You can see this photo of her confronting him. It'll be interesting to hear what she said, but you can imagine she was on that list. She almost certainly personally knew the state representative Melissa Hortman, who was murdered. And so you had someone saying, Tina Smith says she can't talk right now because she's heading to the floor to find Mike Lee. And then someone else posted this photo saying, and she found him. And hopefully gave him a serious piece of her mind. I can't even, look at this photo again. I cannot even imagine what is running through Mike Lee's head that makes him post those disgusting posts. And Trump hasn't even apparently called Tim Walz yet. Dylan Wells says Walz still hasn't heard from Trump per a person close to the governor. Unbelievable. And meanwhile, do you know what MAGA accounts, Trump cheerleaders, are up to? Benny Johnson says live footage of President Trump's approval rating. That's your take right now, Benny? And then to follow up on Don Jr., he was confronted on the fact that Trump is acting like he's not immersed in conflicts of interest with his crypto venture. And this News Nation reporter brings up, he had to report that he made $57 million from that company.
Crypto, your dad's financial disclosure form came out, and I saw he had, I think it was $57.7 million in income from the crypto company World Financial Liberty that you guys are associated with. World Liberty Financial. So he does benefit financially from your enterprise. Well,
he has ownership, but he doesn't touch it, right? That's all walled off. Eric and I are the signatories on that. We manage the trust. We don't talk to him about it. He doesn't, get involved in that. But
he doesn't touch it. He touches the money that he gets from it, but he doesn't touch it per se.
Give me a joke.
Thank you, Mark Wayne. He doesn't touch it. He doesn't play with it. He's not fondling the company. But yeah, he gets $57 million when he wants it, obviously. But is that a problem? The President of the United States being funneled money from people, foreign interests, from domestic interests, from whoever buys up a bunch of his Trump coin? Is there a problem with that? I'll have you know that Joe Biden was corrupt because Hunter Biden made money doing business in a country that Biden had an effect on because Biden was the vice president, so he had an effect on all the countries. And Biden would do things that were not in Hunter's interest while he was in that position. But that was corrupt because Hunter Biden was making money. So even if Joe Biden didn't know anything about it, Hunter Biden... So Joe Biden was corrupt. See, I'll have you know. But Trump, listen, you seem confused. Trump is not corrupt because he's just making money. But he... So he's making way more money than Hunter ever made. And it's him, not his son and his sons. Which is why it's good, because he's transparent about it. He transparently sets up a company that necessarily hides the identities of the people buying the coin. So you don't know who they are, which makes it to where you know that it's good. I feel like this is coming off wrong. Specifically crypto, it's great because it's made to keep really hard to track who's sending money to who. And so that way Trump can make the money, but he doesn't touch the company, which should give you peace of mind because Hunter Biden has a really big penis. That's Don Jr.'s logic, okay?
He did say and ran on a campaign that he was going to be an active proponent for crypto. Yeah. And again, it's because the people that we used to be able to call here no longer took our calls. We weren't just going to pick up our ball, go home, get in a corner, suck our thumb and cry for mommy.
It's getting a little specific there, Don Jr. What, we're going to go take our balls home? We're going to go sit in the corner? We're going to sit in the corner while two other people make love and one of the people is your significant other? And we're just going to sit there, we're going to pleasure ourselves while somebody else is making love in my bed? What, I'm going to just sit there in the corner of the room in a chair while I watch someone make love to my wife? Is that what you think we're going to do that? You think that John the Pool Boy is just going to make love to my wife while I watch him?
We actually said, hey, we're going to fight back and we're going to take these things that we think are unfair and unjust and we're going to fix that. And
is that fight now centered around regulation? And if so, how do you think that industry, crypto, should be regulated?
Well, I think the regulation side, that's going to be government. I'm not involved on the regulation side, but he said and campaigned on the sort of unfair nature of what's happened in finance. If someone checks a bunch of woke...
No! That doesn't make any sense. I'm so sick of this logic. Why is it okay for your father to make a bunch of money in a really sketchy way where it's really difficult to track who's sending him money, so it could be anybody with any interest, and then he's having dinner with the people who make the most money for him, and then he's having him funneled directly to it. He's already made $57 billion directly. Oh, because we're taking the fight to big banks and we're saying, hey, we have been debanked, and so we are going to do a crypto. That doesn't connect. I've said it to you before. You could make an argument. You could say, I am going to go into office and I'm going to implement policies that benefit the crypto industry because I believe that democratizes finances such that you're not beholden to blah, blah, blah. That's not an argument I agree with, but that is an argument. But that does not connect or justify or rationalize at all Trump himself having... You don't need to have a personal meme coin where people can funnel you money to change regulations around crypto. Those things are not... They are related in that you being funneled money might impact how you're regulating crypto. Oh! I brought up the Joe Biden thing. Do you remember? Do you remember? I feel like I'm going crazy. I'm not crazy. You're crazy. I'm not crazy. You're crazy. Do you remember Victor Shokin? He was fired because he was corrupt, but Hunter's company actually kind of wanted him to stay in power, but the vice president, Joe Biden at the time, getting him fired, pressuring him to be fired was proof that it was corrupt because Hunter Biden actually secretly wanted it, even though his companies admitted they didn't want it. That was supposed to be the conflict of interest, but they're admitting they want to change. They want to do something with crypto officially with regulations. And Trump gets to be funneled money. It's insane. And then about the Minnesota assassination, terrorism, Donald Trump Jr. again does like we saw before. I think it's really the left wing. I think really this is a left-winger, even though he voted for Trump and supported Trump and went after all Democrats.
Do you have any thoughts on political violence and or the political rhetoric in this country? You know what happened in Minnesota recently, but of course your family is familiar with threats and political threats.
Listen, my father's been shot at. I've been tried to, the other side has tried jailing me. They talk a lot about, the rhetoric and the violence, and yet it seems to be mostly caused by them. The 2020 summer of love did not seem like a summer of love. The politicians at high level places encouraging people to attack my father did not seem fair. If Republicans were doing that, they'd be thrown in jail. When a Democrat does it, it's to preserve democracy. You don't
think everybody's got to tune it down a little bit or turn it down a little bit?
Listen, I think what we have to actually do, I would love to see all of that turn down, but I think I'm seeing it come from the left. Everyone talks about Minnesota, but they don't talk about the guy seems to be a leftist. It's a Minnesota politician, or guy who was appointed by the Democrat governor, vice presidential candidate for the Democrat Party, Tim Walz. The guy that committed those atrocities this weekend is a Democrat that worked for Tim Walz, that had the flyers about the No Kings thing in there.
Now, I'm not sure about that, by the way, from what I've seen. I think he voted for your dad and things like that from what I've seen.
I'll believe that when I see it, but he was appointed by Tim Walz.
Well, then see it. Go look. It's there. He was appointed to a nonpartisan panel that's about workforce participation of 60 members of different political ideologies that had nothing to do with him being a Tim Walz loyalist. And because Tim Walz isn't blindly partisan, he was fine appointing people to different things. And this guy has had a clear right-wing ideology. It's not even a debate. His roommate said, I've seen people online. His roommate's probably a right-winger, so he probably follows Don Jr. and saw Don Jr. calling him a Democrat and said, my roommate was not a Democrat. He would be offended if you said that. Obviously, if you see the list, you know exactly where he's coming from.
Also, the Democrat governor, who is an ardent leftist, pushing these things, and he attacked someone who voted against. He attacked a Democrat who voted against giving taxpayer funding and free health care to illegals across America. I mean, that doesn't seem like that should be a controversial thing to vote against. But if you're a Democrat that breaks away from the Democrats, they'll commit violence amongst themselves.
It's sick. Gosh, I'm racking my whole goal lately has been to make politics more fun for y'all. I don't know what to do with this one. I really don't know what to do with this one. I'm just angry. Jokes about how he goes a lot, I guess. Do y'all want that? He goes between all of his sentences. He still looks like a puppy who just got out of the pool. I don't know what am I supposed to. His mouth moved really weird here. Like I'm so mad right now. I don't know what is silly, but he's lying. He's just lying. Which you don't have to. Like or at least I was just completely frank with you. The first assassination against Trump, the guy was looking up people of different political ideologies, and himself seemed to be doing this not for the political reason, but for whatever. These shooters have distorted views of notoriety or something. And it wasn't him being a leftist. But the second guy, at one point was Republican, but he had seemed to slide and was anti-Trump for sure. So I would say that's a political motivation against Trump. So he's not a MAGA person. And acknowledge it and say that's bad. Both are bad. When it was not really a political thing, bad. Whenever it was a political thing, and the guy who went after Trump that time would agree with my stance on Ukraine, I still think he's terrible. So it's really that simple. Be honest about the facts and then it's all bad. But they can't do that. It has to be this team sport thing where if it is a right-wing shooter, they have to like get rid of their own guilt by blaming it on the left. Truly mind-bending. I don't get it. Meanwhile, the No Kings protest happened and a MAGA account said, "No Kings, am I right?" sarcastically, attaching the photo of Biden, as if to say, the liberals say they don't want any kings, but Joe Biden was a king because he spoke in front of red lights one time, if you zoom out, you know what's next to the red lights? Blue lights. But that photo meant Hitler to them. They would say that. Even though whenever other people made comparisons with Trump to Hitler, that was a call for violence. But they did it with Biden because who cares? Who cares about consistency? And someone named John said, imagine posting this about a foreign president who peacefully transferred power and doing so without a hint of irony. Yeah, by the way, you'll keep hearing this MAGA talking point. Now I'm just upset. You'll hear this, so get ready. Wait. You guys are saying you don't want a king, but Trump's not a king. Yeah, we're saying we don't want him to become more tyrannical, king-like. You called him a king and an authoritarian because he had red lights behind him with Joe Biden. Trump has gone after media outlets he doesn't like, tried to overturn an election illegally and steal it whenever he lost it, is sending off U.S. citizens without due process, getting rid of a basic foundation of our system, which is due process, for citizens and non-citizens alike. People are just being disappeared off the streets. He's deploying the National Guard without legal authority. And we can go on. He's aligning himself with authoritarians globally. Maybe that doesn't make him someone who wants to be a king, but it sure makes him something a hell of a lot closer to it than Joe Biden having red lights. That's where I'll leave it. I'm going to combust. I love you all, even when I'm mad.